What's going on, everybody? American Football Network here with another video today. And today we're bringing you our North Carolina Tar Heels preview prediction video. But before we get started, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Help me hit that 1,000 subscribers by the end of August. We are at 942 as of right now. We need 58 more. Help us get there and hit our goal of 1,000 subscribers. We will have a big special going on once we do hit 1,000 subscribers. We'll have a giveaway of some sort. So make sure you guys check that out. Also, make sure you check out our shop. It just recently launched. We're running a 20% off everything starting August 2nd and running through the 7th. So make sure you guys check that out and get your 20% off over there starting on Wednesday. And we appreciate all the support we've gotten from that. You can find the link. I'll put a card right here for it. You can find the link in the description on our channel page. But let's go ahead and jump into today's video. So, the North Carolina Tar Heels last year went 9-5 overall, 6-2 in the ACC regular season. Let's see. In the regular season last year went 9-3, but lost to Oregon in the bowl game and lost to Clemson in the ACC championship. They had some weirder games, especially defensively. The defense for North Carolina last year was atrocious for the most part. And they lost some bad games. They lost to Georgia Tech 21-17. They lost to Clemson 39-10. They lost to Notre Dame 45-32. They lost to NC State 30-27. So they had their share of losses, but they also had some good wins where they, won at Miami 27-24, at Duke 38-35, beat Pitt 42-24, won at Wake Forest 36-34. And then they had some of those question mark games where they still won, but like what was happening when they won at Georgia State 35-28 and at App State 63-61. Both App State had a million chances to win that game. That was the craziest game of the season last year. Very entertaining game for sure, though. But you look at North Carolina and what they bring back. They return 6 starters on offense and 7 starters on defense. They do bring back Drake May, which is the big piece. But they don't really return back any big time receivers. They don't return a running back. So they have a few holes on offense that they're going to have to fix up. But when you look at the defense, in my opinion, the defense is the big problem and the big question mark for North Carolina. And until they get the defense shaping up, they're not going to win an ACC title and beat teams like Clemson and Florida State. They're just not. We looked defensively last year at North Carolina. They were 14th in scoring defense, 12th in run defense, 14th in pass defense, and 14th in total defense. Keep in mind, there are only 14 teams in the ACC, so North Carolina had the worst defense in the ACC last year. And I expect them to be a little bit better, but not much. I think they'll still finish between 10 and 14. Gene Chizik has got to get that defense fixed up and in the right direction. And until that they get there, they can beat teams like Duke and Miami, but they're not going to beat teams like Clemson and Florida State and even NC State to a degree. They're just not going to win those games until they get a better defense. And so I think that is going to be the main thing that holds North Carolina back this season. But let's go ahead and jump in to their schedule. So they start off week 1. They get South Carolina in Charlotte. I have this game as a win. I think that they're better than South Carolina in week 1. I think South Carolina has some pieces they have to figure out. And I think that secondary is going to really – I think Drake May is really going to, take advantage of that weak secondary after Cam Smith, and I'm blanking on the other guy's name. What's the other corner's name? Went to the NFL also. Darius Rush. That's what it was. Darius Rush. They lose both of those two guys. They're top 2 corners. Darius Rush and Cam Smith. Those two are big losses. I think Drake May will be able to take advantage of that. And I just think he has more of an it factor than Spencer Rattler does. I just think Drake May is a better quarterback, and I think that he's going to prove that and lead North Carolina to a win in that game. Then they get App State at home. I have this game as a win. I think that App State is, I don't think they're going to put up as much of a fight as they did last year. I believe game day was at that game, 63-61 loss to North Carolina last year at home. I think North Carolina gets the win at home against App State this year. And I think they beat them by probably 14 plus points this year. I just don't see App State as the same caliber team as they were last year. I just don't think that they're going to be able to really I just don't think they're really going to be able to compete as much as they were able to the year before. Whenever they pushed North Carolina, obviously, they're winning by 2. I just don't see them being able to do that. They're not as talented. They lose a lot. They only returned 4 starters on offense, 5 on defense, new quarterback, new running back, new receivers, whole new secondary pretty much. So, it'll be tough for App State. They'll be solid in their league, but they're not going to be able to compete with North Carolina again. Then they get Minnesota at home. This is kind of one of those weirder games. Like, what led to Minnesota going to North Carolina? I don't really know, but North Carolina is going to win the game. Minnesota's not a very good team. North Carolina is going to put a bunch of points on them, probably 40 points on them. Minnesota has just lost so many pieces that they had from years ago. They've lost all those guys whenever they've won like 11 games, I think it was, 10 or 11 games. They've lost all those pieces, and they haven't really replaced them. And now there's talks that the locker room is toxic under PJ Fleck, toxic culture. So Minnesota not in a good spot. North Carolina should be able to take advantage of that. And they go on the road to Pitt, a team that they beat at home last year, 42-24. But I have this game as a loss. I think Dracovic and the Pitt Panthers are going to be better than they were last year. And I think that they're, with this game being at Pittsburgh, North Carolina losing some pieces offensively, I think that, I think the Pitt's going to be able to take advantage of that and be able to get a win. You look at Pitt, and they returned 6 on offense, 5 on defense. But like I said, they get the transfer quarterback, Phil Dracovic. They returned 2 of their top 3 receivers, and they returned a lot of their secondary. So I think that Pitt is in a good spot, and I think that defense for North Carolina, you're really going to see it fail on them in this game. And this is, in my opinion, the first game it's really going to cost them and hurt them. Then they get Syracuse at home. I have this game as a win. I think Syracuse is, they were a very good team last year through the first 6 games, and then they lost, I believe, the next 6. I believe they went. Let me look real quick. They won they won their first 6 and then lost 6 of their last 7. So up and down year for Syracuse for sure. But with them coming into this season, I think they're going to be a good team. I don't think they're going to start out 6-0 again. I think North Carolina will win this game, but I do think Syracuse will be solid. And if the offense for North Carolina kind of sputters a little bit, Syracuse could definitely steal this game and get the win. Because it's going to be difficult for North Carolina to stop that offense. Still, Syracuse has a good quarterback in Garrett Schrader. They have some pieces offensively. So if this North Carolina offense kind of sputters out a little bit, this is definitely a game they could lose, and Syracuse could take advantage of that, but I don't think that'll happen. Then they get Miami at home. Last year on the road at Miami, North Carolina won 27-24, and I see them winning that game again, I think by a little bit more of a margin. This time, I think Miami is, still in a pretty tough spot, especially at receiver. They only returning receiver they have is Frank Latson. And so that's not very, as a Clemson fan, I know that's not very good. The chances of that guy playing 8 games are not very likely. And so, I just think Miami's in a rough spot. Tyler Van Dyke has a lot that he's got to prove this year, whereas Drake May has proven he's going to be a Heisman contender for sure. He's going to lead this offense, and, neither one of these defenses are really that good. So I think that kind of evens out a little bit. Then they get Virginia at home. I have this game as a win. Virginia is the worst team in the ACC. North Carolina will have no trouble with them. They won last year on the road at Virginia, 31-28. North Carolina played a ton of close games last year. I expect them to not play quite as many, and like this year in this Virginia game. I expect them to put more than 31 on them, and I think they can hold them to less than 28. But moving on to the next game at Georgia Tech. This is a game they lost last year, 21-17 at home. I have this game as a win, but you can't overlook Georgia Tech this year. And we don't really know what Georgia Tech's going to be. They bring in Haynes King. If he can get to what he was supposed to be before he went to A&M, what he was expected to be out of high school, if he can get close to that, Georgia Tech is going to be a solid team and win 5 or 6 games. They just are. They have a decent bit of talent, but the main thing that they've always lacked for forever, for a while now for sure, is a quarterback. Now, they had Jeff Sims, who I think is a great quarterback if developed. The problem is they didn't develop him at all. Once he I think he's got all the tools to be a great quarterback, but he was not developed whatsoever at Georgia Tech. So if Georgia Tech can get Haynes King back to that pre-A&M Haynes King, then I think they can be a solid team. And I think that they can push North Carolina in this game, but I still think North Carolina will get the win. I just think they're going to have too much offense for the Yellow Jackets. Then they get Campbell at home. This is a win. Not much discussion needed for that one. Then they get Duke at home. Out of this game is a win. Duke should have won that game last year for sure. That was I don't know how they managed to blow that one, but North Carolina got the win on the road at Duke last year, 38-35. So they get them at home this year a little bit later in the season. I think this is going to be a great game for sure, but I do think North Carolina gets the win. I think they have a little too much for Duke. I think they're a little bit more experienced. I think Duke, relies a lot on a bunch of young players. And I think North Carolina will get the win, but I would not be shocked whatsoever if Duke gets the win, and I expect this to be a highly competitive game. Then they go on the road to Clemson. I have this game as a loss. Like we talked about earlier, the defense is not very good at all. And so until your defense improves, you're just not going to hang with teams like Clemson. We look at how up and down Clemson was offensively last season. They beat North Carolina 39-10 and threw Cade Klubnik in the third drive and let him finish out the game as a true freshman in the ACC championship, and they win 39-10, and he plays almost perfect. So, North Carolina, until that defense gets better, they're just not going to be able to compete with the teams like Clemson, Florida State, NC State, teams like that. They're just not going to be able to. So I have that game as a loss, and I have the rivalry game on the road at NC State as a loss as well. I think Brennan Armstrong and NC State are going to be pretty dangerous this year. I feel like they're being overlooked. And if Armstrong can get back to what he was 2 years ago, throwing for 5,000 yards before Tony Elliott and his coaching staff kind of screwed him over and messed him up, I think that Armstrong and the NC State offense could be very dangerous. The only problem I see for them is just receiver-wise. They don't really have a whole lot of receivers. As Devin Carter transferred to West Virginia, I believe, and they lose a few other guys and only 6 starters coming back on that defense. But I think NC State can have a solid season. Just depends on Armstrong, in my opinion. And I think they can get that win at North Carolina. But that wraps up today's video. I have North Carolina overall going 9-3, 5-3 in the ACC. That is good for third in the ACC. So not a bad season. I have them behind Clemson and Florida State. But that wraps up today's video. I appreciate all of you guys watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you guys next time.